The town of Alder Roan never stayed fully quiet. Even after midnight there was always some small sound. Wind brushing old street signs. A loose screen tapping against wood. Far highway noise rolling like slow thunder behind the trees. But every night at exactly 12, one sound did not belong. Footsteps. Soft. Careful. Measured. Always stopping at the same place. Right outside one narrow house at the end of Birch Hollow Lane. Inside that house lived a man named Ellery Voss. People in town did not know much about him. They only knew he had arrived 3 winters ago, in a faded blue truck filled with boxes that looked too light to hold anything important. He spoke politely when spoken to, paid in exact cash at the grocery store, never stayed long enough for small talk. No one had seen friends visit. No music came from the house. No television glow touched the curtains at night. Just silence, except for the footsteps. Ellie first heard them on a night heavy with rain smell. The clock beside his bed had just turned to 12. He had not been asleep. Sleep had become something distant in recent years. Something that visited other people but not him. He was sitting in a chair near the window, holding a photograph he no longer looked at directly, only from the corner of his eye, as if seeing it clearly might reopen something that had barely closed. Then came the sound. One step. Another. Slow. Deliberate. The wooden boards of the porch giving a quiet, tired creak. He thought it was the wind. But the wind does not pause between steps. The wind does not stop exactly at a door. The sound ended. Not fading away. Not moving on. Just ending. As if someone stood there. Waiting. Ellery did not move toward the door. He did not call out. He simply sat very still, listening for breath, for fabric shifting, for anything human. Nothing. After a long time the night sounds returned. Crickets. Distant tires. Branches rubbing together. He told himself it had been nothing. Old houses make old noises, and tired minds add meaning where none exists. Yet the next night, at the same minute, the footsteps came again. And the next night. And the next. Always the same number of steps. Always the same slow rhythm. Always stopping at his door. Never knocking. Days in Alder Row followed gentle routines. Morning coffee at the corner diner. Mail trucks drifting past painted fences. Children walking to school in uneven lines. A dog that barked at the same delivery van each afternoon. Ellie moved through these mornings like a visitor passing through someone else's memory. He nodded when greeted, smiled when expected, spoke only when necessary. But inside, each night waited for him. He began staying awake before midnight, sitting in darkness, watching the thin line of porch light under the door. At first he told himself he wanted proof the sound was real, that he was not losing something else he could not afford to lose. But slowly another feeling grew. A quiet pull. Half fear. Half hope. Because footsteps mean someone is there. And someone being there means something unfinished might still be waiting. On the 7th night he stood up when the sound reached the final board. His hand hovered near the doorknob. Not touching. Just close enough to feel the cold metal. The silence on the other side felt heavy. Like a held breath that refused to release. He waited for a knock. None came. After several minutes the weight lifted. The presence faded without sound. As if the night had quietly taken someone back. Ellery stepped away. Heart beating harder than the moment deserved. Or maybe exactly as hard as it should. He did not open the door. The next morning he walked farther than usual. Past the diner. Past the hardware store. Past the small white church with peeling paint. All the way to the edge of town where Alder Row thinned into long empty road. He stood there watching the distance, as if answers might travel toward him if he waited long enough, as if the horizon carried messages meant only for those who had lost something. An older woman watering plants across the street studied him with careful curiosity. Not unfriendly, just observant. People in small towns learn to read silence. They know when someone carries more than groceries. They know when grief walks beside a person even in daylight. That evening clouds covered the moon. The darkness felt deeper than other nights. Thicker. Closer. Almost listening. Eloy turned off every light in the house. He did not know why. Only that the dark felt more honest. Light asked questions he was not ready to answer. Midnight arrived quietly. Then the footsteps. Closer than ever. Or maybe he was listening harder. Maybe waiting changes the distance of sound. Step. Pause. Step. Wood breathing under weight. His chest tightened. Not from fear alone. From recognition of a pattern his mind almost understood. Like hearing a melody remembered from childhood but missing its final note. Again the sound stopped at the door. But this time something changed. There was another sound. So faint it might have been imagination. A soft shift. Like fabric moving. Or someone turning slightly. Or someone gathering courage. Ellery leaned forward. Every sense reaching outward. Even the ones that had slept for years. The silence stretched. Thin as glass. Ready to break. Then slowly. Very slowly. A second set of footsteps approached from farther down the porch. Different rhythm. Uneven. Dragging slightly. As if one foot carried more memory than strength. They stopped a few boards away from the first place. No voices. No knock. Only two quiet still points in the dark. Ellery's throat felt dry. Because one visitor could be explained. A stranger. A mistake. A wandering neighbor. Two could not. Minutes passed. Or seconds. Time lost shape inside the waiting. Then both presences faded together. Without retreating sound. Without direction. Without proof they had ever been there. Gone. Ellery opened the door before he could stop himself. Cold night air entered the house. Carrying the smell of wet leaves and distant smoke. Carrying the feeling of something unfinished. The porch was empty. No movement. No shadow. Nothing. Only the old boards. Silent. Ordinary. Almost innocent. He stepped outside. Barefoot on rough wood. Looking left. Then right. Birch Hollow Lane slept peacefully. Windows dark. Street still. A single porch light far away flickering like a tired star. No place for anyone to hide. Yet the feeling of being watched lingered. Not threatening. Just patient. Just waiting for him to understand. As if the night expected something from him. A memory. A word. A decision he had avoided. He returned inside and closed the door gently. Careful not to make sound. As though noise might disturb something unseen. As though quiet was a form of respect. Sleep did not come. Morning arrived pale and slow. Light spreading across the floor like cautious water. At the diner the television murmured low news no one truly listened to. Coffee steam curled into the air. Silverware clicked softly against plates. Life continuing in small ordinary ways. Eloise sat alone at the counter. The waitress whose name tag read Calwin poured coffee without asking. She had learned his routine. Black. No sugar. No conversation unless he began it. Today he surprised her. He asked if anyone had been walking Birch Hollow Lane late at night. She paused. Not because the question was strange, but because his voice carried weight. Because lonely questions sound different from curious ones. She shook her head slowly. Said most people there slept early. Nothing much happened after 10. Nothing ever really changed. Then she studied his face a moment longer than polite. As if deciding whether to ask more. As if kindness and caution were balancing inside her. She chose silence. Ellery thanked her and looked down into the dark surface of the coffee. Seeing not reflection, but distance. Seeing years he tried not to count. That night came again. As nights always do. Unstoppable. Unconcerned. Certain. And with it. Midnight. He did not sit this time. He stood beside the door. Hand already resting on the knob. Breath slow. Eyes open. Waiting without pretending otherwise. The footsteps arrived. Certain. Unchanging. like a promise that refused to explain itself. They stopped. Silence pressed close. Warmer than fear. Colder than hope. Ellery closed his eyes, breathing slowly, as though preparing for something final, as though the next moment might open a door inside him instead of the one before him. Because deep inside, a thought had begun to form. Quiet. Impossible. Persistent. A question he could no longer ignore. What if the one waiting outside was not a stranger at all? What if the night had come, not to frighten him, but to return something he had lost? And if that was true, why did it never knock? Ellery did not sleep after that night. He sat in the chair until morning light filled the room, watching shadows fade from the walls, listening to the quiet breathing of a house that held too many memories. When the sun finally rose, it felt undeserved, like daylight had arrived for the wrong person. He washed his face in cold water, stared at himself in the mirror, trying to recognize the man looking back. The eyes were older than the rest, heavy in a way that years alone could not explain, as if they had seen one moment too many, and never truly stepped away from it. Outside, the town moved gently into another ordinary day. A delivery truck rolled past. Somewhere a lawn mower started. A child laughed and the sound carried farther than expected. Life continued. It always did. That was the strange part about loss. The world never paused to match it. At the diner, Calwen noticed he looked worse than usual. Not sick, just thinner in spirit. She asked if he had slept. He said not much. She nodded like someone who understood more than she said. After a long silence, she placed a small plate beside his coffee. Toast he had not ordered. He started to refuse, then stopped. Kindness was easier to accept when no words followed it. He ate slowly, as if time might stretch if he moved carefully enough. Before leaving, he asked another question, quieter this time. Had anything unusual happened in town recently? Calwen thought for a moment, then shook her head. Said Alder Row was the kind of place where unusual things stayed hidden, or never arrived at all. But her eyes suggested she did not fully believe that. Ellery stepped outside into thin autumn sunlight. The air smelled like dry leaves and distant rain. A season between warmth and cold, between holding on and letting go. He walked without direction, past streets he already knew, past houses that all looked gently similar, until he reached the small public library near the center of town. He had never gone inside before. The building felt older than everything around it. Brick faded by decades of weather. Windows tall and quiet like patient eyes. Inside it smelled of paper and dust and time. A calm different from the silence in his house. This silence felt shared. Less lonely. Behind the front desk sat a man with silver hair tied loosely at the back, reading glasses low on his nose. He looked up with mild surprise, as if visitors were rare but welcome. Ellie asked if the town kept old records, newspapers, property histories, anything about Birch Hollow Lane. The man studied him carefully. Not suspicious, just curious in a gentle way. Then he nodded. Said most small towns keep their past even when no one asks for it. He led Ellery to a back room filled with shelves, boxes labeled in careful handwriting, years stacked beside other years. Dust lifted softly as one box opened. Inside were newspapers older than Ellery's memories. Headlines about storms, school events, lost pets found again, normal life preserved in fading ink. Ellery searched slowly, not sure what he expected to find, only certain that the footsteps meant something older than 3 winters. Time passed without shape, pages turning, light shifting across the floor. Then one photograph caught his eye, a picture of Birch Hollow Lane, taken many years ago, before fresh paint, before new fences. In the image stood a small group of people, smiling toward the camera, unaware of the future waiting beyond the frame. Ellery felt a strange pull in his chest, recognition without reason. He looked closer. 2 figures stood slightly apart from the others. A tall man with tired but gentle posture. Beside him a smaller shape half hidden by shadow. The print was faded. Faces unclear. Yet something about their stillness felt familiar. Like remembering a dream that never fully fades. Below the image a short caption mentioned a winter accident. A house fire at the far end of the lane. No survivors found inside. Eloy's hands grew cold, though the room was warm. He read the line again. Slowly. Carefully. No survivors. Something inside him resisted the words. Not denial. More like confusion. As if memory and fact were quietly disagreeing. He closed the box. Thanked the silver-haired man. Walked back into daylight that now felt thinner. All afternoon a pressure stayed in his chest. Not pain. Just weight. By evening clouds gathered low across the sky, turning sunset into dull grey. The kind of sky that makes sound travel farther. Eloy returned home earlier than usual. He did not turn on lights. Did not sit down. He simply waited. Midnight felt closer than before. Time folding inward. Pulling the night toward him. When the clock reached 12, the footsteps came again. Step. Pause. Step. Exactly the same. Unchanged by discovery. Unmoved by his searching. They stopped at the door. Eloy whispered a question before he realized he was speaking. Who are you? The words felt fragile in the dark. Almost breakable. No answer came. But something shifted. Not sound. Not movement. Presence. The air felt fuller. Closer. As if the space beyond the door had drawn one breath deeper. Then, very faint, a second step behind the first. The uneven dragging rhythm returning. Closer than any night before. Eloy's heart pounded so loudly he feared it might push the silence away. He placed his hand on the knob. This time not hovering. Holding. The metal felt warmer than it should. As if touched moments earlier. He waited. Giving the night one last chance to explain itself. Nothing. Slowly he turned the knob. The door opened. Cold air moved past him, carrying the scent of smoke so faint it could have been memory. The porch was empty again. Yet the feeling remained stronger than ever. Not just watched. Recognized. As though someone had come. Seen him. And chosen to leave. On the wooden floor near the door lay something small. Eloy knelt. Hands unsteady. It was a matchstick. Burned at one end. Blackened. Old. He stared at it for a long time. Because he knew with quiet certainty. It had not been there before. The night offered no explanation. Only silence stretching endlessly down Birch Hollow Lane. Eloy closed his fingers around the matchstick. Feeling its fragile shape. Its history of flame now gone. A memory stirred at the edge of his mind. Smoke. Heat. A voice calling through darkness. He pulled his hand back as if burned by something unseen. Inside the house the clock continued ticking. Calm. Indifferent. But Eloy understood one thing clearly now. The footsteps were not random. Not wandering. Not harmless. They were leading somewhere. Toward a past he had tried not to see. Toward a night that might not be finished. And if the past was truly waiting outside his door, then sooner or later, it would ask to be opened. Eloy did not put the matchstick down. He carried it inside like something fragile enough to break the moment he stopped looking at it. The house felt different now. Not larger. Not smaller. Just aware. As if walls that had stayed silent for years were quietly listening. He placed the matchstick on the table near the chair. Sat across from it. Watching. A simple object. Light. Almost nothing. Yet it pulled at memories buried so deeply they no longer felt like his own. Smoke in the dark. A voice lost inside heat. The sound of something falling where it should have stood. He pressed his palms against his eyes until color flashed behind them. Trying to stop the images before they formed completely. Because once memory becomes clear, it cannot return to shadow. Morning arrived without comfort. Only pale light spreading across unfinished thoughts. Eloy walked to the diner later than usual. The town already moving through its routines. People talking about weather, about school, about things that could be solved. Inside, the diner warmth wrapped around quiet conversations. Calwen looked up the moment he entered. Something in his face made her set the coffee pot down slowly, carefully, like sudden movement might break whatever he was holding together. She asked if he was all right. He answered with the truth that felt safest. "I am not sure." She nodded, not surprised, as if uncertainty was a language she understood. For a long time neither of them spoke, the silence between them calm instead of empty. Finally Eloise asked a question that had been waiting all morning. "Do you remember the fire on Birch Hollow Lane?" Calwen's hand paused around a cup. Just slightly, but enough. She did not ask which fire. Small towns rarely need clarification for old pain. Her voice softened. Yes. Only one word. But it carried years inside it. Eloise asked if anyone had lived there before. She looked toward the window, as if memory lived somewhere outside rather than in her mind. Then she said a family had. Quiet people, kept mostly to themselves. The father worked long hours. The child was often seen alone in the yard. One winter night the house burned fast. Too fast for help to matter. After that, the place stayed empty for a long time. Eloise listened without moving, because every word felt both new and already known. He asked if anyone ever found what caused the fire. Calwen shook her head slowly, said sometimes answers disappear with the smoke. The diner sounds returned around them. Plates, voices, normal life continuing without permission. But Eloise felt pulled somewhere far from the room. A memory trying to surface, like something rising through dark water. That afternoon clouds covered the sky again. Heavy, low, holding rain that never quite fell. Eloise returned home carrying a quiet pressure in his chest. Each step closer to the house felt like stepping backward through time. Inside, the air still smelled faintly of smoke. Or maybe memory had learned how to imitate scent. The matchstick remained on the table, exactly where he left it. Waiting. He picked it up, turned it slowly between his fingers. A single burned edge. Proof of flame. Proof of a moment when something small became something unstoppable. His breathing grew uneven, because another memory had begun to form. Not clear, not complete, just feeling. Heat against skin. Light too bright to see through. A voice calling a name he could almost hear. He dropped the matchstick, the sound sharp in the quiet room. Night came slowly, stretching shadows across the floor like long fingers reaching inward. Eloise did not turn on lights. Darkness felt closer to truth now. When midnight arrived, he was already standing at the door. Waiting no longer felt like a choice. It felt inevitable. The footsteps came. Step. Pause. Step. But tonight something was different. They were faster. Not rushed. Just more certain. As if time for silence was ending. They stopped at the door. Before Eloise could breathe, a third sound joined them. Not footsteps. A faint crackle. Soft. Uneven. Like dry wood touched by distant flame. His heart pounded so hard the sound filled his ears. The air grew warmer. Impossible. Unreal. Yet undeniable. For the first time, fear rose stronger than curiosity. Because memory was no longer hiding. It was coming back. Eloise opened the door. The porch stood empty. But the warmth remained, wrapping around him like air from another night. And on the wooden boards lay something new. A small piece of melted glass. Edges curled inward, clouded by heat long gone. He did not need to touch it to know where it came from. A window. A fire. A moment frozen between escape and loss. His knees weakened. Not from the present. From the past finally reaching him. Images flashed sharper now. Flames climbing walls. Smoke swallowing breath. A child's voice calling through darkness. Not outside. Inside. Inside the house. Eloise staggered back, the realization forming faster than he could stop it. The footsteps were not visiting. They were remembering. And the memory was not someone else's. It was his. The truth hovered just beyond full understanding. Close enough to feel. Too heavy to hold. Because if he had been there, if he had lived in that burning house, then one question remained. Quiet. Terrible. Waiting. Who had the second set of footsteps belong to? And why had only one person walked away from the fire? The clock behind him ticked toward another minute. Calm. Unforgiving. Eloise stood in the doorway between night and memory, breathing air that felt filled with smoke from years ago, knowing the answer was near now, so near it could no longer stay hidden. And when it finally came, nothing inside him would remain the same. Night no longer felt endless. For the first time in many years, the darkness inside the chest had a small opening where light could enter slowly, carefully, like morning arriving after a storm that lasted far too long. The house that once held only silence now carried breath, memory, truth, and something softer that had been missing for years. Hope. It did not arrive loudly. It did not erase the past. It simply appeared quietly and refused to leave. Two people stood in the same room where everything had once broken apart. Now standing at the edge of something new, neither fully understood, yet both had waited for without knowing. The silver pendant rested warm inside a closed hand. No longer just an object from the past. Now a bridge between what was lost and what might still be found. We should go, the quiet voice said gently. Not rushed. Not afraid. Just certain. A slow nod answered. Leaving this house felt different from the first leaving years ago. That night had been filled with fear, confusion, running without direction. Tonight felt steady. Not easy, but steady. The door opened to the cool air outside. Stars stretched across the sky, brighter than any city could allow. The same sky that had watched everything happen long ago. The same sky now watching something begin to heal. Each step away from the house felt lighter than expected. Not because the past was gone, but because the truth was finally walking beside it. The car waited where it had been left, silent, patient, like everything else in this journey. As the engine started, a quiet realization settled in. This road no longer led backward. It was leading forward. The drive through the dark carried no music again. Only breathing. Only thought. Only the growing awareness that somewhere ahead waited a life connected by blood, memory, and years of absence. Fear returned in small waves. What if the meeting brought pain instead of peace? What if forgiveness did not exist? What if the truth arrived too late? Human questions. Honest questions. Questions without guarantees. Beside that fear, another feeling moved just as strongly. The need to try. Because some moments define an entire life. And this was one of them. Miles passed beneath the tires. Night slowly softened toward the first hint of dawn at the far edge of the sky. The world felt suspended between ending and beginning. After a long quiet distance, the road curved toward a small building resting alone near a line of trees. A place simple, calm, filled with soft light behind wide windows. Not a hospital exactly. Not a home exactly. Something in between. A place where time moved gently for those still learning how to live with old wounds. The car slowed, then stopped. Breath caught again. Not from running. From arriving. This is where they are, the voice said softly. Silence followed. Because knowing the place and stepping inside were two very different things. Hands trembled slightly. The pendant pressed tighter into the palm. Years of distance stood behind this single door. What if they refused to see me? The answer came calm and certain. Then at least the truth will still reach them. That was enough. The door opened. Warm air wrapped gently around tired shoulders. Inside, everything felt quiet, peaceful, untouched by the storms of the outside world. A soft light filled the hallway. Footsteps echoed faintly, then faded. Someone at a desk looked up with kind eyes that had seen many difficult reunions. No surprise. Only understanding. A name was spoken quietly. Not the old hidden name. The real one. The one carried through every silent year. The kind eyes softened more. They are awake. They have been waiting this morning. Waiting. The word felt almost impossible to hold. Steps moved forward slowly as if walking through water made of memory. At the end of the hallway, a single door stood slightly open. Light spilling through the narrow space onto the floor. Heartbeats loud again. Breathing shallow. This moment existed only once. Never again after it passed. A gentle push opened the door wider. Inside the room, morning light rested across white sheets, a small table, a chair near the window. And there, someone sitting up quietly. Older than memory allowed. Younger than the years of absence felt. Eyes lifting slowly toward the doorway. Two strangers connected by a story neither had chosen. For a long second no one moved. Because some meetings are too large for words at first. The face by the window searched carefully. Not with anger. Not with fear. With hope afraid to exist. A step forward. Then another. The pendant slipped from trembling fingers hanging in the light between them. Recognition arrived first in the eyes. Then in the breath. Then everywhere at once. A whisper filled the space. You came back. Tears answered before words could. Yes. Nothing else mattered in that instant. Not the lost years. Not the silence. Not the blame that had shaped two separate lives. Only this moment. Only this truth. Time did not heal everything. But it opened the door where healing could finally begin. Slowly, carefully, arms wrapped around a presence once lost to darkness. Not perfect. Not complete. But real. And real was enough. Outside the window, morning rose fully across the sky. Light touching the trees, the road, the quiet world continuing forward. Inside the room, the past loosened its grip little by little. No grand speeches followed. No dramatic explanations. Only quiet conversation. Soft questions. Long pauses where simply being together said more than language ever could. Truth was shared gently, piece by piece. Not to reopen wounds, but to let them breathe. And something unexpected grew in that shared silence. Forgiveness. Not instant. Not easy. But possible. Hours passed unnoticed as morning became afternoon. At last a calm stillness settled where pain had once lived. The story that began with a silent box at a front door had led here. Not to an ending, but to a beginning hidden inside loss all along. Because some clues are not meant to solve mysteries. Some are meant to bring people home. Later, when the sun lowered again and quiet filled the room, once more a simple question was asked. What happens now? The answer came with a small, honest smile. Now we learn the rest of life together. No certainty. No promises of perfect days. Only together. And sometimes together is the greatest ending any story can offer. Far away, the empty house still stood beneath the wide sky. But it no longer held the weight of silence. Because silence had finally spoken. Truth had finally been seen. And the hidden clue inside a forgotten box had done what it was always meant to do. It did not change the past. It changed what came after. The road ahead remained long unknown, unfinished. But for the first time in many years it was no longer walked alone. And that quiet, simple truth, more than anything else, was enough. Ellery did not close the door. Cold night air moved slowly through the house, mixing with warmth that did not belong to the present. Two seasons touching the same moment. He stood frozen between them, breathing carefully, as if one sudden movement might scatter the truth before he could face it. The melted glass remained on the porch, quiet proof that memory was no longer only inside his mind. For years he had believed forgetting was survival. That silence could seal the past the way winter seals the ground. But the footsteps had come anyway. Patient, certain, unwilling to disappear. And now the past was no longer asking to be remembered. It was asking to be understood. Ellery stepped outside slowly, bare feet against cold wood, feeling every grain of the porch beneath him. As real as the night. As real as the fear rising in his chest. The lane was empty. No wind. No movement. Only darkness stretching between houses that slept peacefully. Peacefully for everyone except him. He looked down at the melted glass again. This time he picked it up. It was lighter than he expected. Edges smooth where heat had softened them. A a fragile shape created in violence. His hand trembled. Not from the object. From the memory pressing closer. Smoke rolling along a ceiling. Orange light shaking against walls. A voice shouting through heat. Not distant. Near. Calling a name. His name. Ellery's breath caught. The sound breaking quietly in the dark. Because the memory did not stop there. Another voice. Smaller. Afraid. Trying to answer. Then coughing. Then silence. He pressed the glass into his palm until the pressure hurt. Trying to anchor himself in the present. Trying not to fall fully into the past opening beneath him. For a long moment he could not move. Then slowly, without deciding to, he stepped off the porch. Onto Birch Hollow Lane. The road felt longer at night. Each step forward carrying weight from years he could no longer avoid. He walked toward the far end. Toward the place where the burn house had once stood. Grass had grown there now. Wild. Untrimmed. As if the land preferred forgetting. No fence. No marker. Nothing to explain what had happened. Just open darkness. Ellery stopped at the edge of the empty lot. His heart beating so loudly the sound seemed to fill the air around him. This was where memory ended. And truth began. For years he had never come here. Not once. Even by accident. His mind had built quiet walls. Guiding his steps away. Protecting him from knowing. But the footsteps had led him back. Because some stories refused to stay buried. The night felt warmer here. Not with comfort. With echo. As if heat from long ago still lived beneath the ground. Ellery's breathing grew shallow. Images pushing harder now. Flames racing faster than thought. Hands searching through smoke. A doorway glowing white with heat. And a choice. One terrible. Instant choice. Run. Or go back. His knees weakened. Because he knew now. He had run. The truth did not arrive gently. It struck with the force of memory finally complete. He had escaped the fire. Alone. Behind him. Someone had still been inside. Small. Afraid. Waiting for help that never came. A sound escaped his throat. Not quite a word. Not quite grief. Something deeper than both. For years he had believed he was only a survivor. A man marked by tragedy but not defined by it. But standing here, he understood the weight he had carried without naming. He had not only survived. He had left. The night stayed silent. Not cruel. Not kind. Simply present. As if waiting for him to finish the truth himself. Tears blurred the darkness. Yet he did not look away. Because another realization was forming. Slow. Inevitable. The second set of footsteps. Uneven. Dragging slightly. Not a stranger. Not a ghost of the house. The child. Still walking. Still reaching the door he never opened. Every midnight. For years. Not to frighten him. To bring him back. Ellery's chest tightened until breathing felt impossible. I am sorry. The words came out broken. Barely sound. But the night heard them. For the first time. The silence changed. Not warmer. Not colder. Closer. A faint movement behind him. Soft as memory turning. Ellery did not run. He did not hide. Slowly. With more courage than he believed he had left. He turned around. At first he saw nothing. Only darkness resting on the quiet road. Then, a shape. Small. Still. Standing a few steps away. Not clear. Not solid. But present. The air around it shimmered faintly. Like heat remembered rather than seen. Ellery's breath shook. Yet he forced himself to remain. Because fear was no longer the heaviest feeling. Love was. Regret was. The shape did not move closer. Did not speak. Only stood. Waiting the way it always had. For him. Time stretched. Long enough for a lifetime to pass between two heartbeats. Ellery knelt slowly on the cold ground. Lowering himself until he could not fall any further. I should have come back. The confession felt like breaking open, every word carrying years of silence. I was afraid. The truth hurt more than any punishment could. I thought I would die too. The night listened, holding every word without judgment. Tears fell freely now, no longer resisted. I am so sorry. The shape flickered slightly, not fading, not growing, just hearing. For the first time since the fire, Ellery allowed himself to remember the child's face. Not smoke-covered, not lost, alive, laughing in sunlight, running across a yard that no longer existed. The memory hurt, but it also felt honest. And honesty changed something in the air. The warmth shifted, gentler, like heat turning into light. The small shape moved one step closer. No sound, only presence. Ellery's heart pounded with fragile hope he did not deserve, because forgiveness was not something he expected. Only truth, only the chance to finally stop running. The shape lifted slightly, as if reaching, not touching, just reaching. Ellery closed his eyes, letting the moment exist without fear. For the first time in years, the weight inside his chest loosened. Just a little. Enough to breathe. Enough to feel something other than guilt. The night around them remained still, but no longer empty, because this was the moment everything had been walking toward. Not punishment, not haunting, understanding. And whatever happened next would decide whether the footsteps would finally stop. Ellery kept his eyes closed, not from fear now, but from the fragile feeling that the moment might disappear if he tried too hard to see it. The night air rested gently against his face, cool and quiet, so different from the heat that had lived in his memory for years. Somewhere far away a car passed on another road. A normal sound, a reminder that the world still moved forward. Even while he remained here between past and present, he opened his eyes slowly. The small shape was still there, faint, soft at the edges, like light seen through water. Not frightening, not angry, only waiting. Waiting the way it had waited every midnight outside his door. Patient beyond anything human. Ellery felt another wave of sorrow rise inside him. But beneath the sorrow something new began to breathe. Relief. Because the truth was finally spoken. And truth changes silence. His voice trembled as he spoke again. Quieter now. Gentler. I remember you. The words felt important. More than apology. More than grief. To remember someone is to let them live again. Even if only in the space of a heart. The faint shape seemed to steady. Not brighter, but clearer. As if memory itself were giving it form. Ellery's hands rested against the cold ground. He did not try to reach forward. He did not try to hold what could not be held. Some distances are meant to stay sacred. Tears moved down his face without shame, carrying years of silence away in quiet lines. For so long he had believed punishment was the only ending he deserved. That guilt was the only honest way to keep loving someone he had lost. But standing here, kneeling in the dark where the house once stood, he felt something different. The child had not come for punishment. The footsteps had never sounded angry, never rushed, never demanding, only patient, as if waiting for him to return. Not to the fire, but to the memory of love that existed before it. The realization settled slowly, like snow falling without sound. Love does not stay trapped in the worst moment. It keeps reaching for the moments before. Ellery's breathing deepened, the tight place in his chest loosening more with every second. I was scared. He whispered again. But I never stopped loving you. The night held the words gently. No echo. No judgment. Just space. The faint shape shimmered once, soft as a candle moving in still air. Then something changed. Not outside. Inside. The heavy weight Ellery had carried for years shifted. Not gone completely, but no longer crushing. Grief remained. It always would. But guilt began to loosen its grip, because the child had come back, not to accuse, but to lead him here, to this truth, to this moment of finally speaking what had been buried. Ellery felt warmth rise behind his ribs. Not fire. Not pain. Something quieter. Forgiveness. Or the beginning of it. The small shape lifted slightly, as if standing taller, as if the waiting was ending. Ellery watched through blurred vision, afraid to breathe too loudly. For a heartbeat the world felt perfectly still, balanced between holding on and letting go. Then the shape began to fade. Not sudden, not frightening, gentle, like mist touched by morning light. Ellery's chest tightened again, instinct reaching to stop the moment, to keep it from leaving like everything else had. But this time he did not beg. He did not reach, because he understood. Some goodbyes are not losses. They are releases. Thank you, he whispered into the quiet. The words felt small compared to everything inside him. Yet they were enough. The last trace of the shape softened into darkness, until only the empty night remained. But the emptiness felt different now. Not hollow. Peaceful. Ellery stayed kneeling for a long time, breathing slowly, letting the silence settle around him in a new way. For the first time in years, the night did not feel like something chasing him. It felt like something opening. Eventually he stood, his legs unsteady, but lighter than before. He looked once more at the place where the house had stood, grass moving faintly in a breeze he could barely feel. Nothing marked the ground. No sign of fire. No sign of loss. Yet everything had changed. Because memory had changed. He turned and walked back down Birch Hollow Lane, each step quieter than the ones before, as if the road itself understood the journey was ending. When he reached his porch, he paused, waiting, listening. Midnight had long passed, but habit held him still for a moment. The boards remained silent. No footsteps. No creak. No waiting presence. Only calm. A deep, steady calm he had almost forgotten was possible. Ellery let out a slow breath, one he felt he had been holding for years. Inside the house the air felt different too. Not haunted. Not heavy. Just a house. Simple. Still. He stepped in and closed the door softly behind him. The clock on the wall continued its quiet ticking, but the sound no longer felt like counting down. It felt like moving forward. He picked up the burned matchstick from the table, looked at it one last time, a symbol of the moment everything had broken. Then he carried it to the kitchen, opened the small drawer beside the sink, and placed it inside. Not thrown away. Not hidden. Kept. Because the past was no longer something to escape. It was something to remember honestly. Morning came slowly, golden light touching the windows, birdsong returning to the quiet street. Ellery stepped outside with a cup of coffee in his hands, the air cool and clear, carrying the simple promise of another day. Across the lane a neighbor waved. Casual. Ordinary. Ellery found himself waving back. A small movement, but new. At the diner Calwyn noticed the change immediately. Not in his clothes. Not in his posture. In his eyes. The heaviness had softened, like a storm that had finally spent itself. She poured his coffee, set it down, and this time he spoke first. I slept. Her smile was gentle, not surprised. Some nights are meant for rest, she said quietly. He nodded, understanding more than the words. Outside the town of Alder Row moved through another peaceful morning. Cars passing, doors opening, life continuing in its quiet, steady rhythm. Nothing looked different. Yet for Ellie, everything was. Because every midnight footstep had carried him back to a single truth. Love waits. Even in silence. Even in darkness. Even across years of regret. And when we finally turn to face it, the waiting can end. That night, when midnight came again, Birch Hollow Lane stayed still. No footsteps. No creaking boards. No unseen presence at the door. Only wind moving softly through the trees. Like a whisper finally at peace. Ellery stood for a moment in the quiet, not listening for ghosts, not fearing memory, just breathing. Then he turned off the light and went to sleep.